Hello, you lousy kids. It's Michael Hutchison here of the You Lousy Kids channel. And I should mention a little background on who I am, not that you care, but it does kind of feed into all this. I just saw the Superman 2025 movie with Nathan Fillion, David Corenswet, and Rachel Brosnahan, and Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, directed by James Gunn. The reason I mentioned who I am is just because I was once trying to break into DC Comics. I'm a lifelong Superman fan. I edited a DC Comics fanzine for 6 years. Well, during that whole time I was trying to break into DC Comics. I've self-published comic books since then. All my life I've wanted to do a Superman movie. You know, not that I ever went out to Hollywood and tried to become a writer. It's just all in my head. You know, I'm just a geek. I'm a geek like we all are, you know. We've all thought of how we'd want to do a Superman movie. And the reason I mention all this is that this Superman movie is a lot more like what I would like to see a superhero movie be than Man of Steel was. This is a very good movie. I was pretty happy with it. Here's the elephant in the room. In the last few days, just the last few days, just before this movie opens, all of a sudden, James Gunn and David Corenswet and Sean Gunn are all saying political things. James Gunn is saying this is a political movie. It's a big political movie. It's making a big political statement. Why is he doing that when up until now this seemed to be a non-political movie? It's like this movie is coming out and it appeals to everyone. And all of a sudden he's like, hey, all you Trump voters. It's like, why do that to half the country? That's a stupid thing. It's such a stupid move that people are theorizing that the movie is going to do so badly that they want to blame it on the same reason that so many recent movies have failed, which is that they made a whole bunch of political things and then all these online haters came out and said, ooh, don't go see that movie. And then they can say, it's because those guys were hateful. I don't know that that's really it, because this is a good movie. I really enjoyed this. I had a good time. I encourage you to go see this movie. I think it's a good time in the theaters for the most part. There's nothing woke or political in this entire movie. There's no reason for any of them to be saying any of this. David Corenswet never says truth, justice, and the American way, or any kind of variation on that. So who cares what he thinks it should be, or that he thinks that's an outdated thing? And why would you say that a few days before this opens? It's just a stupid move. Sean Gunn has said a few things about how we are so rude to the people who are guests in our country. They're not guests, they were invaders. I mean, guests are people you invite in. They're people, we have guests. They come in, they show their passport, and they say, okay, you can stay for a while. Here's the terms of the time that you're here. That's guests. People who just barge their way in are invaders. It's not the same thing. I mean, whatever you may think of illegal immigration doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter because that's not what this movie is about. There is a little bit at the end where Superman says, hey, I'm not an alien. And he isn't. He's been raised an American. From birth, he's been raised an American. And especially since 1986, we don't know what the origin is in this version. We don't get a lot of look at the whole thing. James Gunn has said that there's no reason to ever have, you know, Batman as a little kid in the alleyway surrounded by popcorn and pearls. That we don't need to see that again. We don't need to see Superman in a rocket coming to Earth again. We know all that, so let's go on with the movie. And I like that. I like that. You could summarize Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. You could summarize all of their origins in 3 or 4 panels, really, of a comic book. And in the same way, you could do just 3 or 4 shots. If you wanted to, over the opening credits, you see, here's the actor as Superman, and you show the couple putting the baby in the rocket, you show Krypton exploding, you show the couple finding the rocket, and you show Superman in costume. That's all you need. That's his origin. You could do the entire Justice League's origins over the opening of a Justice League movie with just a few shots of each thing communicating that. You don't need to do 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour long origin. And this movie doesn't do that. So I like that. That's it. I think he's right. We don't need that again. So the reason I say that is you don't see how Clark was brought to Earth. Since 1986, it has been the case that his pod, where he wasn't even born yet on Krypton, his pod of him being as a fetus was sent in the rocket, and he is born on Earth. So technically, he could run for president. That's how much of an Earthling, of an American, of a Kansan he is. So, but then again, most origins, I think even since 1986, they kind of retconned it back that you see on Krypton, they're putting the baby in the rocket. So I don't know. I don't even know what currently applies in DC Comics. I have not read DC Comics in a decade. From wanting to be somebody who worked for them, I don't even buy DC Comics anymore. I don't like what the product they put out. I'm getting off track here, but I'm just saying I don't even know what's in the current DC Comics here. So whatever the case may be, Superman is an Earthling. He is an American, and so I don't really get all that worked up about the fact that he's like, you're an alien. You know, Lex Luthor's going on and on about that. He is an alien. He is, in origin, an alien from another planet. The important thing is that in all ways, he is a guy born here. This movie makes a lot about the fact that, I don't want to give away too many spoilers here, but basically that Lex Luthor establishes that Superman was sent here to lord over us. And whether this is a translation or not that is being used to his advantage, Mr. Terrific says, oh no, those translators are spot on. I don't know why Mr. Terrific would say that without looking into it himself. He's supposedly one of the biggest geniuses in the world. But anyway, that's the driver of the movie. It leads everybody to suddenly rebel against Superman, and nobody stands up for him. Like, the public is such idiots that they're easily led. I don't like that, but that's kind of how everybody sees it. So you never see anybody in the media saying, well, I think that Superman is on our side, and whatever his parents said, you know, they could make that case. You never see anybody arguing that. It's just, oh, now everybody's being led by the nose by Lex Luthor, and now they hate him. And now everybody's being led by this news story, and now they love him. It's just, yeah, I don't really care for that part of the plot so much. I did like that when all of a sudden this crowd suddenly turns against Superman, this guy throws a can of soup at his head. It's not the typical tomato. Where does anybody get a rotten tomato? You know, it's just, they always have one. Well, this guy has a can of soup. He throws it at Superman's head. Doesn't hurt him, of course, because he's Superman. But it does remind me that, you know, Donald Trump said that people were going to be carrying a can of soup that they could use as a weapon. And then when accused, why do you have a can of soup? They say, I've got a can of soup for my family. And wouldn't you know it, there was actually videos of people saying that, yeah, I've got soup for my family right here. You know, that's, I don't know that that is what James Gunn is playing into when he has a guy throw a can of soup, but it is kind of with a thing of the times is what it is. I like that there's other superheroes in this. That seems to be what a lot of my fellow DC Comics fans have been really upset about. They're like, oh, he's bringing in too much. There's too many characters. It's too much. And it's like, no, the fact is there is a proto-Justice League, which is Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific. And there's also Metamorpho, who plays an important part in the story. He is well cast, the guy who plays Metamorpho. He's really good. He is good as Metamorpho. I'd say great. Let's talk about the casting. Guy Gardner, spot on. Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner. He's a little old, but I don't care. If anything, the age kind of plays with the fact that Guy Gardner is kind of homelier than everybody else, and that's okay. They just call him Green Lantern. They never call him Guy Gardner, which is weird. There's Hawkgirl. You don't really know much about her. Mr. Terrific plays a huge part in this story. He's basically like I wouldn't even say a supporting player. He is just as much the featured superhero as Superman is. And there is that kind of takes away a few things, but you need somebody with the technical savvy to help Lois along in all these things because she's not a scientist. So I get that. So as far as casting goes, the Justice League characters are great. I have no problem with Guy Gardner's performance in this. And the great thing about him being Guy Gardner is that they can drop Guy Gardner as a character. If nobody likes him, okay, he's not that important to the DCU. He can go. Whenever they introduce the other Green Lanterns, he can be gone. But I love that they bring in a whole bunch of DC characters that fans will recognize. They, along with DC stuff, like one sign in the background is for Pesty Cola. They even have the in-universe cola from the DCU. That's kind of cool. But the characters, all of Lex Luthor's team is, well, they didn't have Mercy Graves in there. I think because it would throw people off. Mercy Graves is kind of a good character in the comics now, and it might be confusing if she shows up as a bad guy. But there's Lex Luthor. There's a big guy named Otis, who is a little more intelligent than Otis from the old show. But it's Otis. His name is Otis Berg. His last name is Berg. Eve Teschmacher is in this. They just call her Eve. But then all the other people who are around Lex Luthor are all people who were scientists in the comics at some point or another. One of the women is the woman who programmed the supercomputer that said, hey, that is Superman, and he's also Clark Kent. And Lex Luthor said, get rid of this computer. That's stupid. He would never be disguising himself as a normal human. That's ridiculous. That's why computers aren't as smart as people. Get rid of that computer. That's that woman. She's in there. There's another guy. I could have sworn that this guy was Dabney Donovan. One of his associates has got the glasses and the big bushy eyebrows and the mustache, and I'm like, I think that's Dabney Donovan, given that he's the guy who releases the monster that turns into the big monster that we see in all the ads. That would be perfect if he was Dabney Donovan, but he's not. He's some other character who is a minor scientist, at least as far as I can tell. I was trying to look through the credits. The credits go by very fast. But I looked on the IMDb, which has some things wrong. It says that Ron Troop is Christopher McDonald, who's a white guy. So I know that that's not who is playing Ron Troop. They might have gotten the name wrong in the casting there. So some of these castings might be wrong. Some of the credits might be wrong. The guy isn't Dabney Donovan, but he looks for all the world like it. And it would be spot on casting if you were trying to get a Dabney Donovan, is all I'm saying. They go to the Pentagon, and inside they have a tracking camera going around and around a table. Everybody has little nameplates in front of them, but you don't get to get a good look at them. I don't know what is wrong with that, why they don't want to just let you read the names as they go by, but one of the people is Flo Crawley, who's a minor character from the old Suicide Squad. I think another woman... There's a woman who I'm very sure is supposed to be Amanda Waller, but she never talks, and I don't think it's... I think they're still using the same person who played Amanda Waller in the last DCEU. I think they still kept that casting, so maybe it's not her. I don't know. There's Rick Flag, who is Rick Flag Sr., and it's kind of weird because Peacemaker is in this, played by John Cena, and yet Peacemaker is a character from the DCEU. And all of that was thrown out, but Peacemaker is still in the new DCU, played by the same guy. And of course, Peacemaker killed Rick Flag Jr. I guess this is the son of the general who's here, or maybe that doesn't apply because the Suicide Squad movie is from the last series. So that's a little confusing. Getting to the main characters, I'm torn on Lex Luthor because I don't know what makes a good Lex Luthor. But Nicholas Hoult plays him. I don't have anything against his performance. I would say he does a really good job as Lex Luthor. Depends what you think is a good Lex Luthor, I guess. Because he doesn't put on any kind of battle suit. It's kind of weird that he says that he's meeting Superman for the first time, and yet he's opposed him for years. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane is the best Lois Lane. I will fight you on this. She is great. She's great as Lois Lane. She is exactly the right amount of feisty and a little superior and all that. She's great. I just love her. She's excellently cast. David Corenswet as Superman. This is the biggie. I've no problem with casting somebody who's pretty much an unknown. That's what they did with Christopher Reeve, and I mean, I think Christopher Reeve is the best. I don't know why I'm tripping over my name. It's late. I'm trying to do this as soon as I'm home and I'm tired. I'm sorry. It was a long movie. It is a long movie. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes at least. I don't know the exact timing. And I should mention, I came in 10 minutes late. I bought this through Amazon, but then through Fandango, and then I paid for it with PayPal, and between all that, they ended up sending the tickets to my wife's email account, not to my Fandango account. So I didn't have my tickets, and I'm trying to sort all that out, and I missed the first 10 minutes, but it looks like the first 10 minutes are pretty much what they released of Superman hitting the Arctic and whistling for the dog and taken into the fortress. You've seen all that. They released it all already. And the other thing that they released in advance of this was a long, boring conversation between Lois and Clark. And that is the key to why I don't think that Corenswet is the best Superman. And it may be just direction here, because overall, I love his performance as Superman. I love his performance as Clark Kent, as the actual Clark Kent in the suit doing stuff. When he drops the glasses but is still not in costume as Superman, he's sort of a third persona. We've been talking about this online recently, how Batman has a third persona. He has, I'm Batman. And then he has Bruce Wayne who's, hey, hi, how are you doing? Hey, it's great to see you. Hey, I'd love to have you at this party. Sure, you know what? He's kind of a douche, you know. Then there is Batman with the mask down, sitting at the computer talking to Robin or talking to Alfred. And he is not doing the douchey Bruce Wayne. He's not doing the he's a third persona. And in the same way, Clark has this third persona where he's not putting on the front of Superman. And I have to say, this Superman doesn't put on much of a front. This is one of the problems. I'll get to this. Superman and Lois have this long talk, and he gets very upset at the way she's badgering him in the discussion. And he just does not seem like Superman. First of all, he comes off as very stupid. He's like a college sophomore in his approach. She's starting to ask him about how he interfered, and he's getting upset with her. This is more like what you would expect from Guy Gardner. He's like, I had to help people. They were in danger, and I went and I did stuff, and I helped. I didn't think it through. I just had to do good. That's Guy Gardner level. Superman is smarter than that. He's more educated than that. He's more manly than that. And that is the real problem. He's not manly. Not in the way he is presented. I'm not saying David Corenswet can't be manly. If asked to do a different portrayal, that more of the Christopher Reeve, hands on his hips and hello, good to see you. Yes, Warden, here he is, Lex Luthor. You're looking for him. Nice to see you. You're doing a good job. That sort of stuff. That's a little more of a strong persona. This Superman does not project that. He projects weakness all over the place. Lois is a strong character, but Clark is not. He's not an alpha male. And Superman, of all people, should be an alpha male. He should be a leader. He should come in and just be he has a commanding presence. He does. He is the person that everybody defers to him. All the other superheroes defer to him as he's, the great one. And in this movie, it's like he's not even part of the Justice Gang, and they kind of treat him like, well, you're not a professional like we are. Go away. They don't even regard him as a big thing. And quite frankly, the way he performs, there's no reason to look at him that way. That's the biggest problem I have with this movie. David Corenswet's performance And the way he's written, the way it's written is the way that David Corenswet acts it, and I, I just don't get any confidence from that guy. The way that Crypto bounces all over him and doesn't obey him. Superman should be a guy who immediately goes out and watches all of the episodes of the Dog Whisperer in a minute, watching them at high speed and absorbing all that information, coming back and knowing how to command a dog. I guess it's just that the dog doesn't even see him as the pack leader. He's like, "You're kind of a wimp as Superman." Yes, he is. He's not taking charge. He is not assuming the leader of the pack for Crypto, and Crypto just walks all over him and abuses him and is disobedient. The fact that Superman doesn't have control over him is kind of funny, and it also kind of sets Crypto back from being a big superpowered dog who is a mega weapon, because you don't have any control over him. He's still a dog. He goes after the T-spheres because they're ball-shaped. That's funny, but at the same time, it's like, Superman should have some control over him. Just because he's Superman, he should learn something about dog obedience. It's frustrating watching this because Superman should be in control of things. He should at least have control of his own life, and instead he's just kind of he's beaten up and tossed around and throughout this movie, and he doesn't give the presence of being the Man of Steel. The really weird thing about how Superman is not played as a manly alpha male leader is that it's the same problem that we all have with Pedro Pascal being Reed Richards. From everything we've seen in the previews so far, the movie's not out yet, he could surprise us, but from everything we've seen, Reed Richards is not played as manly. He's not a leader. He's all uncertain of himself and not really the smartest guy in the universe the way he's supposed to be. So we have the two big movies of the summer. Superman is not a big manly macho man. Reed Richards is not a big commanding leader. These two guys who should be the leaders of their respective universes for the most part just aren't. They don't come off that way. Maybe this makes them more identifiable for the womany men of today. I don't know, but they should be alpha males, and they're not. And that's one of the big problems with this movie and with Fantastic Four. As Superman, I like the portrayal here much more than the Man of Steel movie. I like it even probably more than Superman Returns. Nothing against that actor. I thought he did a great job, but I like this movie, what it shows of Superman saving people and, making sure that he even saves a squirrel at one point. It's just, that's how different he is from the Man of Steel, who focuses on the threat and lets the entire city crumble around him and, thousands die. That was the big problem a lot of us had with Man of Steel. It's just, I know that Superman is focused on the real threat, which is going to destroy the entire planet. At the same time, he should be doing something to save some of the people around him. It's just who Superman is. And that's why Man of Steel got that wrong. And then they overcorrected with the Batman versus Superman, where they're like, well, it's okay if they fight there. That place is evacuated. And it's like, that's not what we're asking for. We're asking for Superman to be a little conscious of this, because that's who Superman is. It just is. He saves people. The way that monster steps on the cylinders and they all go flying towards that girl and he saves the girl. We see that in the ads. That's Superman. We all know that that's the right way to portray Superman. And so a lot of the Superman portrayal is really good, and then every now and then they put in some really stupid joke that just seems not the kind of thing Superman would say. It's the kind of thing Guy Gardner might say. There's jokes that are said by the wrong people. I like Lois Lane. I like the new Perry White is, I'm sorry, I don't know the actor's name. He's a guy from The Wire. He is the guy who played James Greer, who becomes Admiral Greer in the Tom Clancy movies. So you probably know who I'm talking about. He actually gets to smoke a cigar in this movie. And then they have to put in a big disclaimer, they didn't pay for us to have this. It's like weird thing to come from a series that at one point had the Marlboro truck featured 14 times in Superman 2. But yeah, now they're much more sensitive about that. You can't even have him smoking, which is kind of weird because you can't smoke in a building in New York now. But nonetheless, he has a unlit cigar. I guess that's why it's unlit. But I like his portrayal. It's really good. I know they race swapped Perry White already for the Man of Steel, and I was okay with that too. Perry White is a character that's free to race swap. I'm not going to make a big argument about that. Jimmy Olsen should be a freckle-faced guy, and this one is. And I like that. He's not too red-haired, but Jimmy Olsen was really good. I'd say spot on in the portrayal, really. As good as you're going to get anyway. I'd still rather have a real redhead, but c'est la vie. The music. The music is fine. Sorry, that's all there is. The music's fine. It's not great. They use the Superman theme. I don't need to hear the Superman theme by John Williams. Go ahead and make your own Superman theme. And I don't think they did. I think they used the Superman theme by John Williams, and aside from that, there's no real themes that I really picked up on. And again, I wasn't there for the music, so maybe there was some theme songs and I wasn't picking up on it, but John Williams is great at doing theme songs. I mean, the Superman movie from 1978 is just wonderful. He has that Krypton, which is cold and pompous and overwhelming, and then you have that beautiful pastoral theme for Kansas, the da 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 da, and it just says everything you need to know about that part of Superman's life as versus the Krypton part. And then all these themes are very important, all of them, not just the Superman march. And in this movie, I didn't really feel any themes. There's just a lot of cacophony going on. So maybe if I listened to the soundtrack, I'd be wrong. And I'd be going, oh, okay, I can kind of see what he's doing. Maybe if I listened to it a few times. But for right now, the symphonic soundtrack didn't really do anything for me. And then he throws in a lot of rock music at the end. Overwhelmingly loud rock music, quite frankly. I was kind of wishing that I had earplugs like my wife has earplugs. My wife had earplugs for the whole movie because it's so loud. We went to the IMAX, of course. And that's the last thing I need to talk about with this movie. It is too loud, too noisy, I can't understand what people are saying because there's a lot going on while they're talking, and I need to turn on the subtitles, and there are no subtitles in the theater. You shouldn't need subtitles. You should be able to understand what people are saying, but there's a lot of stuff that they're saying. It's like the movie Tenet, where people like the movie, but they didn't know what people are saying, and you need to get home and turn the captions on, and it's going, oh yeah, okay, now I kind of get it. This movie is a lot like Tenet, where I just can't make out what is being said, and I'm waiting for it to come home so I can turn on the captions. Hi. Editing version of Michael here. I completely forgot to talk about something, so I'm doing this in my studio with my my nice comic book background, but it's not the green screen, so sorry, this is a little disjointed. I completely forgot to talk about Ma and Pa Kent. They're terrible. Not the actors, but they're not from Oklahoma, they're from Kansas. And the accent is completely wrong, and the accent is so thick you wonder, why doesn't Clark talk like that? Why doesn't Clark talk a little bit like that, like he was raised by these people? I've always thought it was kind of funny that Lex Luthor never got a linguistics guy who could listen to the way he talks and go, you know what, he's from northern Kansas or something like that, because it should be a little, there should be a little lingering, bit of the way he's raised. But his parents sound completely alien to him. They are these big, pudgy, older, kind of, instead of being like hardworking, blue-collar, salt-of-the-earth types, they're like trailer park people. I don't know why this portrayal is the way it is. Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman in the 90s, kind of made fun of the way that Lois thought that Smallville would be so backwards. And then uh, it turns out that, like, she starts explaining what a fax is to Ma Kent, and she's like, "Oh, I was just wondering if we had paper in our fax machine, that's all." And it's Kansas is not that backwards. If anything, today Kansas is not remote enough from civilization that Superman shouldn't be more tainted by the outward culture. I mean, the way I grew up in the 70s and 80s, it was possible to be completely alone out in the countryside. And to be living on a farm, you just wanted to go in to town sometime and see a movie. I mean, that was like a big thing. You had to go 80 miles to see a new movie. You had to go to one of the bigger cities to see a new movie. And you'd go to a nearby theater, which is only showing one thing, and it's 8 months old. That's that was the culture I grew up in, and that's the way that Superman could kind of be cut off from the world. These days, with the internet everywhere and the media and whatever, it's kind of weird that Superman does grow up as down home, old school as he does. But especially considering he grows up in the 2000s now. But anyway, this is all meandering. But anyway, the portrayal of Ma and Pa Kent is a little irritating. It's a little much. That's all I'm saying. That's about the only other thing that I have to say about this movie. As far as, is it woke? No. At the end, Lex Luthor says, "You're an alien," and Superman's like, "I'm just a normal human guy." And he really gets, you don't need to say this to Lex Luthor. You're not going to convince Lex Luthor anyway. And but I get the point. I mean, Superman should be saying this in an interview to everybody else, not to Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor doesn't care. But I think that's the point that Sean Gunn is kind of referring to when he says, we're being rude to everybody and we don't treat people here right. And I don't know, it doesn't really say that. This movie is not about illegal immigration. This movie is not about what is truth, justice, and the American way, or whether it's not. It does kind of say that Superman is an American actor, that, his taking action is for America, and he's trying to say that he's not, but he doesn't really get into that. He kind of says it a little bit during that interview. That interview is just one of the worst scenes, and it's a long scene, and it's right up front. It's probably the worst part of this movie. It doesn't show Superman very well. It makes it look like he hasn't thought through his actions, when I'm sure he does. And his ability to be able to represent himself and talk things through, he should be more mature than the way he is presented. And I think that's going to be seen as the main problem with this movie. Otherwise, I love its approach to DC Comics. I love how it has all these superheroes. That's how I think Superman should be. He should be in a world that already has superheroes, but after him. He comes first, and everybody goes, "Oh, I guess you should wear costumes and call yourself something." They're inspired by him to do this. And he comes first, and then other people take up being, metahumans and all that, as it's explained. And finally, there is one more thing I want to address. I really wish that Superman and Lois, I wish they didn't have this relationship where she knows who he is. I wish that it would at least give us one movie where she doesn't know that he is Clark Kent. And I realize that they kind of like the fact that they've dropped this as an issue, because then he has a confidant that he can talk to. But I really miss the whole love triangle with two people, which was a main part of the Superman mythos up until the 1990s. And then they just, then they married him off, and she knows who he is, and it's been dropped. And it's kind of, I miss that. I really wish that at least for the beginning of the Superman in the new movies, that she didn't know who he was. But that's how I would do it. It's not how they're doing it. Okay. It's a preference thing. But aside from that, I like this movie. I wish I could love this movie. There's just, I don't like the Superman portrayal, but maybe they'll do a little better in the next one. I'm not against James Gunn doing the universe. I think this is a huge step up from the DCEU and how dark it was and how it was bad. I did not like Zack Snyder's universe at all. I don't like it at all. I really like this approach. I'm even okay with Superman's costume, although I would prefer the traditional S. But I like that the shorts are back. I like most of this. I like that there is the Fortress of Solitude and Superman robots and crypto. It's all stuff that I wanted to see in a Superman movie, and they did. Maybe not the way I would have done it, but they did. And so I'm very happy with this. I don't think it's a bad movie, and I think it'll do really well. I just hope you'll give it a chance.